So we move now to listen to our chief guest of the day, but before I invite him, I would like to introduce him. Honorable Justice Abhay Oka ji, born on 25th May 1960, did his BSc and LLM from University of Bombay. Enrolled as an advocate in the bar in 1983, started practicing in Thane District Court in the chamber of his father, Srinivas Okaji. In 1985-86, he joined the chamber of Shri V.P. Tipnis, a former judge of the Bombay High Court and former Lokayukt. He has appeared in several important matters and in public interest litigation. He was elevated as additional judge of Bombay High Court in 2003 and appointed as a permanent judge in 2005. His Lordship took oath as the Chief Justice of High Court of Karnataka in May 2019, and he took oath as the Judge of the Honorable Supreme Court of India on 31st August 2021. Rahul Machaya, a lawyer and a scholar from Karnataka, has written in a column about Justice Oka, which I would like to read. I quote, "Justice Oka has been a bold judge whose ability to deftly detect impropriety and shortcomings in action led him to unhesitatingly crack the whip whenever necessary. Justice Krishna Iyer has described judges as invigorators and enforcers of constitutionality. Justice Oka has been one such judge, and Supreme Court will be enriched by his elevation." May I request our chief guest for today, Justice Abhay Oka ji, to deliver his inaugural address.
Namaste, Pranam, Suprabhat and good morning. Respected O.P. Tiwari ji, Justice B.N. Sri Krishna, my brother, judge and friend, Justice Ramesh Dhanuka, Sri Tiwari, the junior, Professor Bhogal, experts in the field of yoga who are present here in large numbers, and sisters and brothers. It is a great privilege for me to be a part of inaugural function of the International Conference on Yoga and Mental Health, Scope, Evidence and Evolution, organized by a great institution like Kaivalya Dham. Mr. Subodh Tiwari has already said that, but I repeat that. When my good friend Ramesh Dhanuka called me and conveyed the request of Kaivalya Dham to attend this function, I started wondering why I have been chosen. Because I have no association with yoga personally, except for the fact that my brother, who is a teacher in yoga, taught me some part of yoga for dealing with cervical spondylitis. And I can say that I was saved from cervical spondylitis by practice of yoga. When Brother Ramesh told me about association of Justice B.N. Sri Krishna and his late father, Justice D.R. Dhanuka, I had no option but to accept the request. We, the members of the legal fraternity, hold both of them in great esteem. I was really thrilled to know that Justice M.N. Venkatacharya, former Chief Justice of India, had inaugurated one such international conference. He is a great philosopher and guru of all the judges. I believe that those who work in the field of law, whether as lawyers, whether as judges, whether judge of a civil court, high court or Supreme Court, he always continues as a student of law. After I received this invite, I read a lot about yoga as a student. I visited Patanjali, I read so many books, so much of material is available on internet. And therefore, I am making it very clear that I am going to address this August gathering as a student. Maybe I may be holding post of judge of a Supreme Court, but I must say that I may not be entirely right in what I am going to say today. As usual, it has been a great learning experience for me to hear a discourse by Justice B.N. Srikrishna. It was always unforgettable experience to hear Justice Srikrishna both inside and outside the court. Brother Ramesh Dhanuka shared his own experiences. Now I can say that those judges who practice yoga stand out. I have appeared before Justice Srikrishna in large number of cases. Like other lawyers, I must have tested his patience. But one great quality which he possessed was he never lost his patience. I hear the same thing about Brother Justice Dhanuka from my colleagues and some advocate friends. Shri Subodh Tiwari in his letter addressed to me had suggested to speak on a different topic. He had formulated that topic from judgments towards resolution dealing with conflicts. Mr. Tiwari rightly stated in his letter that human beings are being affected by external and internal conflicts which lead to distress at mental level. I am going to address all of you on this different topic as suggested by Mr. Subodh Tiwari. When I deal with this subject, we must understand why there is litigation which is brought to court of law. The reasons are complex. It may be a combination of various factors. It may be due to ambition, greed, hatred, desire to acquire more and more wealth, ego, anger, and so on. These reasons apply not only to litigations to which individuals are parties. These reasons are applicable even when entities litigate. The reason is, when we talk about entities like company, ultimately they are headed by human beings. Critics of modern judicial system, I must say there are many, they have said with some justification that so-called resolution of a dispute through the judgment of a court is always superficial. In certain category of cases, the resolution of a dispute through our judgment, which is delivered in accordance with law, which is within four corners of law, does not really deal with or get rid of root cause of conflict between the individuals. After long deliberations and after long hearing, we deliver judgments in many cases. But the judgments do not necessarily improve the state of mind of the litigants. In many cases, it is the state of mind or frame of mind of litigants which leads to creation of a litigation or a dispute which comes before the court. One classic example I'll give you of a dispute between separated parents. The dispute is over custody of a minor child. We make our best endeavor and ultimately decide that custody should go to A parent or B parent, or there can be some kind of a joint custody. When we try to resolve such disputes by our judgment, we don't give real solution to the dispute. In a custody dispute to which parents are fighting, it is the state of mind of parents which leads to such a dispute. It may be bitterness, it may be a sense of betrayal, or anger or distrust, or maybe combination of all these factors which leads to such kind of a dispute. After resolution by the court by delivering a judgment, the state of mind of parents remains unaffected. And more importantly, whatever way we decide a custody dispute, the mental health of the child is affected. Even after decision of the court in such matters, the mental afflictions remain. Sometimes the outcome of a litigation by a judgment of the court can have a very serious consequences. I'll give you an example of a matrimonial dispute. A dispute which is not settled by adoption of various means ultimately is resolved one way or the other by the court. I have seen in obtained number of cases that after resolution by the court, the party which succeeds after a long battle develops euphoria, which leads to creation of ego. The losing spouse sulks and gets depressed. The decision of the court, which puts an end to the dispute in accordance with law, does not improve the mental health of the parties. When we decide a dispute between the brothers, when they fight over their share in father's property or ancestral property, the court cannot put an end to the bitterness. Very often you must have heard that Supreme Court is called as final court of the land. But that does not mean that we who sit in the Supreme Court are able to finally decide a conflict in its true sense. What we do is final because there is no higher court in the hierarchy of courts in our country. The stakeholders in judiciary, namely the judges, the members of the bar, advocates, litigants, and staff members of the court, undergo a lot of stress and mental strain. Therefore, ultimately it boils down to state of mind of all stakeholders and mainly the litigants. Now, what is the solution? Since late 70s, we have started taking recourse to various alternative forms of resolution of disputes which come to the court. I'll deal briefly with only two methods. One is Lok Adalat and other is mediation. Why we choose these alternative modes of dispute resolution? I'll not go into the details, but the main idea is that by resolution of a dispute in a different form, the parties should make peace, come together and agree for amicable resolution of their dispute. The dispute should be resolved in such a manner that will bring peace of mind to those litigants who are fighting. Of course, the techniques used in Lok Adalat and mediation are totally different. Mediators require specialized training. The members of the Lok Adalat do not require that specialized training. The role of members of Lok Adalat is essentially to perform a role which elder members of the family, maybe a joint Hindu family, maybe family of belonging to persons belonging to any religion, are expected to perform. They are supposed to give healing touch when two members of the family have a dispute or they fight. Mediation is very useful in litigations involving human issues like matrimonial disputes, the family disputes, or a share in ancestral property, in some cases even commercial disputes. Other day I had word with Mr. Subodh Tiwari on this mediation also. Then I suddenly felt that perhaps mediation is a field where the futuristic evolution of yoga should be considered. maybe yoga can play a role in the process of mediation. For example, if warring husband and wife engage in proper yogic practices before the mediator actually starts working or actually starts the process of mediation, the stress reduction will help the process of mediation. As I said, matrimonial disputes very often affect the mental health of the parties. This is where the interplay between yoga and psychology will be very important. To put it in one sentence, yoga has potential to be a real healer when it comes to litigating parties. How we use yoga in dispute resolution is a matter to be decided by experts who are going to participate in the deliberations. Yoga is already a part of training imparted in many state judicial academies to the newly appointed judicial officers. In fact, I was told Kaivalya Dham is also conducting classes, online classes for judicial officers in Maharashtra and Goa in Maharashtra Judicial Academy, which is incidentally headed by Brother Justice Dhanuka. We have a peculiar problem in our judiciary. We are short of numbers. As per judgment of the Supreme Court in the year 2002, the just to population ratio in 2007 should have been minimum 50 per million. Today, in 2021, we are almost at the end of 2021, it is 20 or 21. And therefore, one judge in India is taking workload which is shared by more than 2 judges in any developed countries. And therefore, judicial officers lead a very stressful life. It is not only because of the workload. There are other factors like the expectations are very high. Common man feels that judiciary will give solution to all problems which they face. There is a social media which puts a lot of strain and stress on the judicial officers. The experts who are assembled here will have to take a call on how yoga can be used to build enhanced coping capacity in our judicial officers, which can reduce their mental stress. I gave example of Justice Sri Krishna and my brother Justice Dhanuka. Those who practice yoga have a lot of patience. They never get irritated in the court. I can confess that I don't belong to this category of judges. Sometimes I do lose patience in the court. But speaking for myself, I developed art of transferring my stress to the lawyers who appear before me. But still, I can say that during long career of 18 years and more, sometimes I have experienced the mental stress. For the benefit of the experts who are going to deal with the issue of psychology, interplay between psychology and yoga, I want to share one more thing. Very few of you know that there's one more very subtle reason why mental strain and stress is caused to the judges, and especially those who sit in the constitutional courts, or for that matter, any court. There is always one obligation which troubles mind of judges, that is obligation to decide a case correctly. And that's a huge task before us. There are views and views. There are interpretations and interpretations. And therefore, even this part of the duty of the judge has effect on our mental capacity, or that causes strain and stress. One more area where yoga is already there, that is our presence in the state. I was associated with the Legal Service Authority, therefore I had occasion to visit almost all important jails in the state except Arthur Road in Bombay. I found that the training in yoga is already in place in all our central prisons. Here again, the interplay between psychology and yoga may help to bring about reformation in our convicts. Some of you may be aware that we have adopted a criminal jurisprudence which does not fully approve what is called as retributive theory. We don't punish a criminal to take revenge. Reformative theory is essential part of our criminal jurisprudence. What we believe is by detaining a person who has committed a crime in prison will bring about a reformation in the personality of that criminal. One of the objects of detaining a person in jails, we have those open jails and various categories of jails, is to ensure that when the prisoner comes out, a person who is convicted for committing an offense, when he comes out, he is a reformed person and he is in position to lead normal, healthy life. But in practice, it is not happening. We are not able to reform our prisoners, even though we detain them for a few years in the jail. The reason is that after a person is convicted by a criminal court for an offense, it affects his mental health. Somehow, the atmosphere in our prisons, of course, we have done a lot of work in prison reforms. I'll transgress from the subject. Justice Radhakrishnan is part of the setup. He has done a lot of work. He has submitted a long report to the High Court suggesting various reforms in prisons. But unfortunately, the atmosphere, generally, I am speaking generally, there may be good cases where people are doing good job in prisons. But the atmosphere in prisons hardly improves mental health of a prisoner. The reformative theory has remained on paper. The experts in the field of yoga and those who are experts in psychology can have deliberation on the effective use of yoga for improving mental health of our prisoners and for reforming them. As said by the earlier speakers, the pandemic of COVID-19 has posed biggest threat not only to physical health but also to mental health. Livelihood of many sections of society was affected due to lockdown, due to COVID-related reasons. The loss of near and dear ones due to COVID had worst impact on mental health. All of us have started living in a world which is gripped with fear. In Karnataka, as a Chief Justice, I used to preside over a bench dealing with PILs concerning COVID. I have seen devastated effect of COVID on mental health of people. So many social organizations, NGOs were involved. They used to submit reports. Some of the lawyers used to visit camps of migrants. They used to tell us what is the mental state of affairs of migrants who are trying to move from the state to their parent state. I have seen my brother judges of the district court getting infected with COVID. The worst part was the staff members who got infected with COVID. I used to interact with them in early days of COVID after they used to resume their duty after getting cured. Their mental state was terrible. Some of the doctors working in Karnataka High Court were good psychologists also. They used to do counseling. This is one area where yoga can play a phenomenally good role. Thus, even in the present day context, there is a huge scope for evolution of yoga as a tool to maintain mental health. Evolution of yoga as a protector of mental well-being and health will certainly bring about a revolution. But as I said, there has to be interplay between yoga and psychology, yoga and psychiatry. And that is perhaps one of the main objects of this conference. Before I close, only one more area I will briefly touch. I'll not give reasons why I'm saying this, but I want to say this in presence of this august gathering. Those who are doing great work in the field of yoga have now to remember one thing, that it is necessary to lay emphasis on the fact that yoga has nothing to do with particular religion. Any attempt to relate yoga to a particular religion should not be encouraged. It is not a monopoly of a particular religion or a political group to practice yoga. It is universal. Yoga does not have barriers of religion or limits of any territory. Yoga should not become ritual. As I understand, as a student, I read so many books that yoga is a way of leading healthy life. Some of you are aware, under the Constitution of India, Article 21 gives right to life. Right to life is not right to have animal existence. Right to live includes right to lead a dignified life. It is a right to live a very fulfilling life. It is only when you lead fulfilling life, you live life of dignity, which is a right conferred upon every citizen of India by Article 21. Yoga can potentially become an instrument for leading a very fulfilling and healthy life, which is guaranteed by Article 21 of the Constitution of India. I am a stranger to the field of yoga. I must apologize if I may have crossed that Lakshman Rekha and encroached upon the domain of experts. Some of you know that we, especially those who are judges of the constitutional courts, are often criticized on the ground that we cross that Lakshman Rekha because Constitution has laid down parameters by defining separation of powers. Today, I may be guilty of doing that blunder, but ultimately it is the organizers who have taken risk by inviting a judge to inaugurate this conference. I thank Sri Subodh Tiwari and his team for giving me this great opportunity, unforgettable opportunity, to be in the company of experts in the field of yoga and psychology. I am sure that this conference on yoga and mental health will take us forward. There will be many deliberations on various issues which I have not touched. I have given purely my point of view as a member of the legal fraternity for last about 40 years as a lawyer and as a judge. But I am very sure that this conference will be a great success. I again thank the organizers, and I must compliment all those who are associated with Kaivalya Dham for rendering such a phenomenal service to the society at large. Thank you and pranam.